I guess it worked. Okay, so I wanted to start by saying why I think that gun destruction is an act of compassionate love. Because I think as Christians, we are doing this for different reasons than perhaps other people would do them. My theology is rooted in the love of God, who is the source of all energy in the universe, the creative, redemptive, sustaining power in the world. And we're doing this out of a love for neighbor, we're doing it out of a love for community, we're doing it out of a love for God. As we know, the United States makes up 5% of the world's population. However, it possesses 42% of the world's firearms. The US manufactures one gun every 3 seconds. Not only do Americans have a lot of guns, but we are acquiring them at a staggering rate. According to data from the University of Michigan's Institute for Firearm Injury Prevention, US citizens had approximately 200 million guns in the 90s. We have approximately 450 million now, and in 10, 12 years, that number is going to be going over 500 million guns in the United States. Ready access to firearms increases not only the suicide rate. Stanford University has found that female gun owners, for example, are 37 times more likely to take their own lives with firearms than non-firearm owners. For male gun owners, that's 8 times more likely than non-firearm owners. But has helped firearms become the leading cause of death for children in the United States. Of all the children killed in the world's 23 developed countries by gun, 87% are US children. Criminals also, third reason, are always out to steal firearms because the majority of crimes committed with a firearm are with stolen weapons. While there are no firm numbers on how many unwanted guns are in the US, and we have a guest from the University of Michigan's Institute for Firearm Prevention with us tonight, U of M cites research indicated there are likely millions and millions of guns in the United States that are unwanted. Guns are extremely durable items. They tend to be passed along or gifted to people who may have been wanted by the original owner, but may not be wanted by the person they're left with or given to. And this is the world we want to help. And this is why we help, because gun destruction is an act of compassionate love. Our love for neighbor. We understand that when our neighbor can't sleep at night because they have a gun in the house that they don't want and they don't know who's going to take it, it causes pain. It causes worry. It causes mental anguish. I've spoken with many of them in lines here during past gun buybacks. When these owners don't want their guns in circulation, what do? In 9 states in our country, it is illegal to destroy a firearm. In ours, you are welcome to do so, but many people in line giving us weapons are not equipped to do that according to ATF regulations. If you take it to a police department in Michigan, the state law says the police can do 3 things with unwanted weapons. They can keep them, they can sell them, or they can get them to the state police for destruction. Our experience tells us that there are a lot of people who simply want their weapons destroyed. And that's who we're here to help. They don't want to sell them to a gun shop. They don't want to put them back in circulation, but they want that weapon. Perhaps it was used in trauma. Perhaps it just is something they're not comfortable with in the home. So gun destruction as an act of charity toward our neighbor who is anxious, worried, and concerned that they may have no place to get rid of their unwanted weapon is one of the reasons that I think gun destruction is an act of compassionate love. Second, our actions help us demonstrate and love our community. When Jesus walked among us, he shared a vision of a world of shalom, of peace. He told us to pray that God's world would become our world. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. So that the world that is, we understand it, is not the world that ought to be. The world that ought to be does not have the amount of gun violence that we have. The world that ought to be does not have the amount of gun injury and death in it that we have. And the world that ought to be does not have the amount of unwanted guns in it that we have. The world that ought to be is the world we're working to bring here. When we work for the world that ought to be, we do so not just for our benefit, but we do it for the benefit of others, whose anxiety we lessen. And when those folks embrace a peacefulness. That peacefulness in the one extends beyond them and makes the community more peaceful. We bring down the anxiety of one, we bring down the anxiety of the whole. And third, our actions around gun destruction help us embody our love for God. The fearful culture that you and I inhabit tempts us greatly to find our security, our control, our protection in things other than God. It's why we obsess over having enough money, turn to drugs and alcohol, and sadly turn to guns. But the Bible is clear. Psalm 20 verse 7 says, some put trust in chariots, some put trust in horses, but our trust is in the name of the Lord our God. When we receive donated weapons and when we destroy them, we push back against an idolatry of guns. We make a bold declaration that we trust not in firearms, our money, our politicians, or any power or human enterprise for our safety, but we trust in God. That was the case for Jesus, that was the case for Dr. King, and this becomes our case too. And that's why we have formed a Trinity Gun Disposal and our initiative to destroy hundreds of unwanted guns this summer. And here are some of the people behind the scenes that I'd like to introduce you to. And let's see, I'm standing already. Ben Francois. Is Francois on the Zoom call? Francois Udier, are you there? Okay, Francois is one of our gun disposal guys. Ken Miller, you're here. Ken is one of our leaders for gun disposal. Carol Dietrzak, finance and gift cards. Carol's right over there. Melissa Brown, she's online. Give us a shout, Melissa. I know you're putting a baby down more than likely, but Melissa, there she is.
We're feeding, it's dinner. Yeah, hello.
Okay, I'm glad I don't have you on camera. But Melissa is our volunteer coordinator. Mary Bensmiller, Mark Waldron, raise your hands. These two folks are in charge of Guns and Crafts. And Carl Berry, he's joining us virtually. Carl, how are you doing? Good to see you, Carl.
Well,
Great. I will call upon you a little bit later because if your parish is like mine, safety and liability are two very important topics that we want to discuss tonight. And then Felicity is in charge of our spiritual care, managing that tent. And then Amy and Joanne are in charge of communications. Neither are there today. Our advanced team, Jessica Rienstra. Raise your hand, Jessica. Okay, so all you parishes from here, she's going to be your point person when you have questions about what's happening here. So these are some of the people who are putting things on. This is what we have as tour dates and locations at the moment. St. David's and Barry, can you hear me? You're on the Zoom call, Barry Randolph?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, Barry, and Barry's here representing Church of the Messiah in Detroit. Barry, I've got us for June 15th, 11 to 4, is that right?
For you or for me?
For me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 11 to 4.
Similar things going on that same day, and we had to work, and I wanted to double check, make sure at the time right. Nativity is down for August 3rd. Church of the Messiah, you're still down, Barry, for the 24th, right, of August?
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Grace Church Mount Clemens, as I mentioned, that's their rector's going to be joining us with Zoom, and we'll see what happens there. All Saints Pontiac 9 to 1. I have for you guys. Kermit, is that still good? He's on.
Yep, that's still good.
Yeah, All Saints Pontiac, that's still good? Okay. And then St. Andrews Waterford, October 5th, is that still good? Okay, great. So what I'd like to do now is take a look at how the event works and run through kind of how we envision this working. And write down your questions, we may answer them as we move forward. The site location and selection is the first thing, and that's based on your congregational interest. We work with the congregation well ahead of the event to recruit, train volunteers, raise money, plan publicity, create momentum. Second is setup and site preparation, and we work with each congregation to custom design the event site plan that works for each specific campus. Carl Berry, who you all heard, but is on the Zoom call, is a retired police chief from Plymouth. And he is well acquainted with how to traffic control. He was just working this NFL draft down here. He's the head of security for the auto show for many years and knows how to handle large numbers of people. So we'll sit down, we'll look at the campus, we'll walk through, we'll figure out where everything's gonna go. So it's gonna be traffic flow and management, it's gonna be the disabling sites, it's gonna be food, hospitality, crafts, other displays. We'll work to prepare as much ahead of time as possible to ensure things go smoothly. We've got a ton of 10 by 10 tents, we've got generators, we've got tables, we've got all kinds of stuff. So if you don't have it, we can bring it. But as I say with Jessica, we'll be doing those inventories on what you have and what we have and what we need. And then from there, we usually do as much setup as required the day before, weather permitting, so that when the event starts, ours, as you saw, starts at 1. So we will set up the day before, but we'll obviously be there the morning of. When people hear of free money for guns, the lines form. So we're gonna make sure we have those barricades up and that people are welcomed and kept where they need to be until we open up. The guest arrival and check-in on the day of the event, the firearm donors frequently arrive well ahead of time. As I mentioned, they're greeted by our volunteers who make friendly initial contact. We want the atmosphere of kind of a high school cheerleader car wash, that there's music going, that it's fun, that, you know, people are able through the Guns and Crafts tent. You know, Dave Humphreys, who's on this call, we've had this conversation at least once, if not more, as to why are they buying so many guns? I mean, what are people scared of? And so we want to help make this event a place where people can meet each other. One of the big reasons to do a gun buyback is to make relationships with other people. We have made friends with county commissioners and state representatives and police folk who are all rowing in the same direction. And it's just phenomenal to see the kind of connections you make from doing something like this. So our volunteers are then, we call them shepherds. They're gonna direct the vehicles and answer questions. They hand donors a clipboard and invite them to fill out information sheets. They detail the correct donor information, firearm serial numbers, the type of gun. The donors sign a permission waiver to destroy the firearms and request a thank you gift. Those of you here have a copy of what that donor sheet looks like that we ask. And sometimes we ask for a thank you gift. What would you like? You'd be surprised how many people give you their weapon and they don't want anything. We ran out of gift cards our first time in 20 minutes, and we stayed open for hours taking weapons, and people said, well, I just want to get rid of this. So we'll do that. The gun donors then are led from the entrance with their volunteer, walked down. There's a serpentine kind of line, so we keep as much traffic off the main arteries as we can. And then they're finally accompanied to a disposal station. And their donors may or may not exit the vehicle at that point. However, they must remain in proximity to their firearm because we want to make sure that they are retaining possession and ownership of that gun. They can't give it to us and drive off. We're not gun dealers. We are here to help them and assist them destroy their weapons. So firearms must be unloaded and are to be brought in the trunk or the back seat. They'll also be in a gun lock if possible as well. Paperboard, clipboard, pens are then collected from each vehicle. When the weapon is destroyed, it takes about 10 or 15 minutes. Ken, you've chopped them up before. And the donor will remain in that proximity, so it turns from a gun into a box of parts. So these are some guns we've been practicing that they get turned into, and it's just scrap metal. And so that scrap metal, these buckets have water in them because when you cut them, they get kind of hot, fall in the water. Once they're cooled off, we take them up to the Guns and Crafts tent where Mary and Mark are stationed, and they will help folks. And so the person sees their gun turned into scrap, and then we usher them along. The disabling station that's where trained volunteers, usually with police or military backgrounds, they're going to be the ones removing the firearms from the vehicle. They're going to place them, if needed, in something called a clearing barrel, which is where you can actually fire a gun and it goes into a bunch of sand. We've got a couple of those just in case. You don't want to cut a gun when it's got a bullet in, and so that's the simplest way to just double check if you're not 100% sure. So we verify they're unloaded, we double check the serial numbers, which are recorded and reported as disabled to law enforcement after the event. Now, the US government did not mandate serial numbers on guns until 1968. And when they did mandate serial numbers, they didn't tell which company to start where. So you can have the same serial number on different guns, one's a Winchester, one's a Colt, etc. So we take down what manufacturer and make that gun is as well. The clearing barrel, as I mentioned, it's a steel tube. It's designed to catch bullets in case of a misfire when verifying the firearm is unloaded by clearing the chamber and a magazine if applicable. Firearms are carried pointed up, Ken, is that right? Pointed up. We have several people involved here who know their way around firearms, and we are very happy to welcome those in good conscience who want to help us do this. Firearms are then taken to the disabling station. They're marked with a wax pencil and you have a disabling guide in your packet here as to how the ATF asks us to destroy weapons, to turn them actually into scrap. And then the folks with the chop saws who are going to be in our parking lot set up all pointed away from people, and they will have a backstop with a fire blanket for the sparks to go into. And we will make sure that that area that we identify is one in which there are no leaves or something that could catch fire. And we've got a system down to make sure we do this safely. We also don't accept ammunition. And if somebody gives us a gun with a scratched off serial number, we have the right to return that weapon to them and say, you just take this to the police department, take your ammunition to the police department, but we will take the vast majority of weapons that people will want to surrender to us. We will set up anywhere between 3 to 10 of these power saws in these stations that I mentioned to disable these firearms. They are disabled, as I mentioned, according to federal alcohol, tobacco, and firearm ATF guidelines. And each disabling station is staffed with 1 or 2 trained volunteers. They will be wearing personal protective equipment, including safety glasses, gloves, earplugs, long sleeves, aprons, long pants, closed-toed shoes. Each saw includes clamps to secure the firearm to assure that hands are not near the blade when operating. Once the ammunition is out of the gun, it's more or less like plumbers do every day, they cut pipe. And that's what you're doing, but we're doing it as safely as we possibly can. Then, of course, after this is all done, we also encourage local volunteers. If anybody in your church wants to learn how to disable firearms, what we typically do is have one person cutting the gun and an apprentice next to them. And then you can cut the next one with somebody else looking. And we're more than happy that as you look for volunteers in your congregations and you have somebody who's perhaps familiar with chop saws and would like to do this, I've seen 5'2" women love to chop the gun. Doesn't really matter who it is, but we would be more than happy to invite you to participate in that as well. Thank you gifts, gift cards and other gifts are kept in secure locked locations adjacent to the Disabling Center. Carol, as I mentioned, is in charge of our gift cards, and Carol, our Kroger account got approved today. So that is going to allow us to buy massive amounts of gift cards, even with logos on them. So we're going to be happy to give out cards that are either Kroger or Meijer or Target, but a place that does not sell firearms. Carol's going to make sure that she's got enough volunteers and security personnel to keep those cards safe. And following the successful disabling of weapons, donors can then distribute the cards and other thank yous. Once the donors have received then their gifts, they are invited to go park their car around the corner and to come back to our Guns and Crafts Arts table. This area gives opportunity to create art out of scrap gun parts. Tables with art supplies like glue guns and wood planks are set up, along with a variety of gun parts, and volunteers help people design and make artistic creations. And Mark, you were here a little early. We talked a little bit about how we might have some chains so that you could make a necklace. You could certainly make some rings, a key fob. Easiest might be a cross. And so there are going to be a lot of different options. I have in my office a sign that says peace, and here I can pass these out. And peace is made out of gun parts, Mercy, I've seen them passed out as well. You guys can pass some of these out, this is what it kind of looks like when you get your hands on it. There you go. Here you go, for those of you online, you'll have to use your imagination there as to what some of these items are that are being passed out. So the arts and crafts table, it gives us the opportunity to create our own art with the items that are there. We also, we won't be selling anything, it's gonna be donation based, okay? All donations. This is what you guys get for volunteering, and this is our official 2024 Chop 'em Up Tour, Trinity Gun Disposal t-shirt. Yours as a volunteer will be coming in a bright yellow or orange color, so that you are readily identified as a volunteer. So this is how we want to kind of reward you guys. There you go. That's just a prototype, so the dates and stuff on the back will probably not correct. So donors can visit this kind of merch table where there will be a variety of merchandise. Mark is going home tonight with this kind of bucket full of steel, and he's going to make some creative things with it, and those will be on sale: earrings, key fobs, bracelets. He's a creative guy, and we have a lot of creative people, I think, who are not only here, but will be visiting us during this. And then we're going to have at least one more practice, so that we'll have some more parts. And I think by the time we get to your parishes, we should have a good selection of things for people to do, and we'll probably have discovered some ways to use these parts too. In fact, let's see, Mary, I'm gonna put these here. Would you distribute these, not distribute these, but just kind of show people what these look like from your arts and crafts table? I mean, you're just gonna be creative. Look at a lot of tiny parts pop out of these guns when you cut them up. So we'll be tapping on your imaginations for that. So as I mentioned, we want to create a light and festive atmosphere. This includes opportunities to not just go to the arts and crafts, the guns and crafts table, but let's have some food available. Let's have some music playing, maybe live music. Maybe there's someone in your parish who wants to provide music for you guys. Food and drink, I think, is great to provide. Again, keep a donation bucket nearby, whatever you think would be appropriate for your community. And so we'll gather tables and chairs together. We'll put some tents up, and we are going to work to coordinate with other community groups. On the phone call with me, Susan Yegeshian with Moms Demand Action, and so that's one of the groups that we're going to be partnering with, and then I invite you guys to partner with too. Does the county health department want to send some gun locks or some representatives that would be kind of in the same mood as what we're doing here. We also will be staffing and facilitating a medical volunteer area where a volunteer EMT or equivalent is on hand to help in case of emergency, as well as hydration care and that kind of thing. Pastors and clergy, as well as mental health professionals, are also invited to be on hand to monitor any need expressed by participants. Spiritual care area can be set up, and it's especially recommended if the event is happening after a public expression of gun violence, like a mass shooting. Gift cards and finances, as I mentioned, we're currently getting that tightened up here. Gift cards to Kroger, Target, Meijer is an example, and this is typically what we price for guns: $50 for a long gun, shotgun or rifles. It's interesting in talking with the state police about how we want to inform them about what we're doing. They said, don't bother with long guns. We don't even keep track of those. There are just so many. And so pistols, on the other hand, there's a Michigan pistol registry. So we will be keeping the numbers and submitting them to our local law enforcement. That is where the state police want us to give them. What they do with them is up to them. We know our wonderful brothers and sisters who put on blue for us every day are underpaid and understaffed, and they've got a lot of stuff to do. And to give them 200 serial numbers to upload may be tough for that to happen. And then $200 for an assault weapon. Last time we had a buyback, we had a couple of assault weapons turned into AK-47, and I think and one other gun. So that's typically what those look like. Regarding law enforcement and licensing, Trinity Gun Disposal remains in close contact with our law enforcement representatives on the federal, state, and local levels, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure proper licensing and protocols are in place. Currently, the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms does not recommend federal licensing or an FLL for these activities. Those are typically for people who own gun stores, and we're going to be very, very clear that we are not taking possession of these weapons. We are not going to be buying them, we are not going to be storing them, we are going to be helping people, our donors who don't want them any longer, to destroy them. The state police do recommend, as I mentioned, data on destroying weapons to the Michigan Pistol Registry via local law enforcement. And as I mentioned, we use the following protocol, and I'm just going to repeat it. Firearms are disabled according to these guidelines in the presence of the donor prior to the donor leaving the event. Thus, volunteers disabling the weapons cannot be conveyed as ownership of the weapon. A firearm is not present when the donor and participant leaves the premise. Leaves the premises because it has been destroyed and only its scrap pieces remain. Trinity and its volunteers are never in ownership of a firearm at any time without the donor present. While our representatives handle the firearm by removing it, verifying it's unloaded, and then disabling it, this does not constitute transfer of ownership when the gun donor is present. This above described process has been legally approved through one of our partner groups called Raw Tools, who ran it up the flagpole with the Colorado Attorney General and on the state level. And we've described it again to our federal, local, and state law enforcement, and so that they know what we're doing. We give them the dates ahead of time. We're not doing this behind a veil at all. So security and law enforcement, we work to inform and involve law enforcement in mutually beneficial ways to ensure the safety of all involved and to report, as I mentioned, those serial numbers of destroyed weapons in a timely and appropriate fashion. It's also important that we have a 4-person private security team that are in place at each event. So in addition to people like Ken and others who know weapons, we will have security people who are paid and who are there. I'm hoping that I'm still working with the bishop on this, that they should not be armed. I think it's counterproductive to have them armed at an event where we're taking guns in to destroy. But as those of you who've done research, if you have a taser gun, if you have a pepper spray, I mean, when you look at the statistics, they are right up there in terms of fending off attackers. There are non-lethal ways that are helpful. Let's see, we're going to work to inform and involve the law enforcement locally in mutually beneficial ways, as I mentioned. We're also going to, let's see, I'm going to now throw it to Carl, who's here. Carl, you're muted, you're going to have to unmute. And I want you to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, because Carl, as I mentioned, is retired. He not only led the police force in Plymouth, but he founded the police force in Plymouth Township. Is that right, Carl?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your feelings about this event and what you see as being some of the things that you think we need to know.
Well, first off, it's interesting that we're destroying firearms or weapons when, as you and I talked about, Reverend, it's easier to buy a gun than it is to get rid of a gun. And that's what we're trying to do and striving to do, is set up a system so that if people want to get rid of their firearms, they have the ability to do it in a safe and sound manner. My background, I was a police officer, started out in the city of Plymouth, retired from there as the chief of police, went to Plymouth Township, started the police department, retired there as a police chief. Then I built a Harley store down in Taylor and sold it in 1999, and then became chief of security for the North American International Auto Show. And at the time that I became chief of security was in August of 2001, and then September the 11th occurred, and the whole scope of security for auto shows and major events changed. So I was there for about 24 years. I also am security for the Thanksgiving Day Parade, for the fireworks. We work for the Port Authority, and I work very closely with the Detroit Police Department and a lot of adventures that are going on. My background in law enforcement, I've been trained by the FBI, I've been trained by the Secret Service. I've worked with Homeland Security, and I am also currently Vice President of the Air and Space Association here in Michigan.
So I like to call Carl a rhino, retired in name only. He stays extremely busy, and it's great that you've lent your great expertise to us as we go about this work, Carl. So glad that you're here. He'll be in on these meetings at our parishes as well as we prepare for this. So you may be asking what kind of volunteers are needed to run this, and who might at your parish be interested in doing this. First of all, there are shepherds or greeter volunteers, and as I mentioned, Melissa Brown, who was the one who was feeding the baby, she oversees that for us. For our event, we have we're banking on about 20 volunteers. We have we haven't really asked for them yet, but we have about 15 so far signed up. These are fun events. Some of you guys may want to volunteer for ours just so you kind of see how it goes for yours. We will give you first dibs for that. But the shepherds are placed at the event entrance and are the initial contact with the donors. We call them shepherds. Their job is to do just that, to shepherd our donors and to make that friendly initial contact, to direct the vehicles and to answer the questions. They hand the donors the clipboard, invite them to fill out the information sheets that detail the weapons and the contact information, serial numbers. They will also sign that permission of waiver to destroy the firearms, so it's very clear that people are just giving us these weapons. Every time we've done one of these events, we've had protesters. And there are people who sincerely believe that destroying a gun is really a bad thing to do. And they try to purchase guns from people in line, they try to get the guns from them. And we want to be just really clear that, this is not a red and blue issue. And we'll hear from Dave Humphreys in a minute, this is an issue of a lot of unwanted weapons in our community that are just waiting for trouble to happen. So the gun donors may or may not exit their vehicle, however, they must remain in proximity, as I've mentioned a couple times, with their weapon. Firearms are to be brought in the trunk or back seat, unloaded and locked if possible. We found the last time we did a buyback that 25% of our guns had ammunition in them, no matter how much we stressed. And a lot of them were old, so the bullets were rusted in them, and so we've got some WD-40 to help empty the guns in the chambers. If we can't get them empty, we're not going to chop them, so we can send them off on their merry way. But, Carl and Ken and the others who are going to be making sure those guns are unloaded, have their work cut out for them. Again, because a lot of these are weapons that perhaps haven't been touched in a while. In addition to those shepherds, looking at our screen here, the hospitality volunteers, and they're responsible for food, music, and the overall festival nature of the event. I don't know about you, but in our parish, I have one or two people I call on whenever there's a party, and they know how to plan a party. And that's what we're looking for our hospitality volunteers. Setting up tables, knowing where they're going to go, food service equipment, coordination with those other community groups I mentioned represented at the events, gun safety advocates, health awareness organizations. Also includes the interface with the music or musicians. You can have something as easy as a boom box, or you can have people making live music. But to create that desired atmosphere includes any kind of decoration, arrangement of the music, food areas, signage we will bring, so it will say, pull in here on both sides of the sign, so you have to worry about signs like that. We'll have some made that, half mile ahead, come this way, and as Jessica, and as we meet with your parish and you need custom signage, we'll work that out. Then, of course, we need safety check volunteers. Do you have people in your congregation who have hunting, military, police background to have safety remove those firearms from the vehicles, and if necessary, to place the firearms in the clearing barrels to verify that they're unloaded. These volunteers may also double check the serial numbers on the applications. Firearms are to be carried, as we say, pointed up at all times between the vehicle and safety checks, and between the safety check and the disabling station. And again, we don't accept ammunition. And then if you've got somebody who wants to be a disabling station, destruction station volunteer, those stations that'll be set up and following those guidelines from the ATF, and we're gonna ask that they dress appropriately. We're gonna give them safety glasses, gloves, earplugs, long sleeves, aprons, masks for any of the dust or particles. Each saw includes the clamps to secure that firearm as well, so that we have no accidents. And then, of course, you may have some people who want to help out at the Guns and Crafts tent. So I've described to you what that activity is about, the merch table to make these available to people on a donation basis, medical volunteers, clergy and mental health professionals, really important marketing, media, and neighborhood awareness, getting the word out that we are doing this. You might have people in your congregation that can help with that. And then it's always helpful if they're development volunteers. We're always looking for what do we do next year? And if we have a lot of guns this year, we want to, I think it was Jay Leno who said, eat as many Doritos as you want, we'll make more. So we'll hopefully be able to chop more guns and dispose more next year. So it would be good to have some people with some deep pockets who are there, and we can work with you guys to see maybe if you have some friends. And so now I would like to call on Dave Humphreys, who's on Zoom here with yet another phenomenal background there, Dave. I don't think that's Philly today. Is that Ann Arbor today?
This is Ann Arbor, yeah. I'm in Ann Arbor today.
Yes, he's got an Ann Arbor accent too. Dave and his team are going to be participating in each one of our campuses throughout the summer because they are doing really some phenomenal and groundbreaking research that's never been done before on gun disposal in America. And Dave, do you want to take it away here? And let me give you some status here in case you want to show some slides or something.
Great, that would be great, thank you. Okay. All right, can you see that?
There we go. Yep, there we go.
All right, great. Well, it's lovely to be here. Hello to everyone. My name's Dave Humphreys. I am a professor at the University of Oxford, but I'm also a visiting professor here at the University of Michigan. I'm located in the Firearm Injury Prevention Center. And as Chris has said, we've been doing some work, and we're actually one of the very few research groups to have taken an interest in this concept of unwanted guns. I don't think that there's anybody else looking at this in the country at the moment. And we've been working on some different types of research around firearm disposal and unwanted guns. And one of the things that Chris alluded to a little bit there was that we've done some mathematical modeling and looking at the trends in increases in the US firearm stock. And that looks quite concerning. At the moment, it's around just under 400 million firearms. They're estimated to be in circulation. By about 2034, this is going to go up to around 600 million, just below 600 million. So that kind of gives you a sense of the enormity of the challenge that there is to people working on injury prevention in this field. So I just wanted to summarize very briefly what we're trying to do and kind of why we're trying to do it. So we think that this idea of unwanted guns is a potentially useful concept in that it doesn't infringe upon anybody's individual liberties to own firearms or their constitutional rights. It's really about helping people or helping provide greater provision for people to get rid of firearms if they don't want them. If they do want them, totally fine, they can keep them. And this is where this links up to some of the work you're doing. I can't believe my luck in coming to Michigan and finding this amazing community of people who are doing this work. So our project is titled Reluctant Owners and Unwanted Firearms. And what we're interested in doing is using this opportunity that you're all planning to find out a bit more about why people are interested in disposing of firearms or divesting in firearms, as they sometimes call it. I'll just move these slides forward. Okay, there we go. So just very quickly, there are 3 research aims that we have. The first one is to basically just understand the implementation and the outputs of the events you're putting on. This should be very easy, just collecting data on how many firearms come in, and basically how the events go. And I have a background in program evaluation, and when we do this type of thing, we're just trying to understand how these events go in order that if somebody else in, say, Pennsylvania wants to implement one in the future, that we can help them understand how these worked well and how they might think about doing that in their areas. The next two aims are the really key ones for this project, which are to understand the perspectives and motivations of individuals seeking to dispose of firearms, and we'll do this through surveys, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And the second one is to understand the wider context around those motivations, why people divest or dispose. And this would be done in much more detail and in-depth interviews. So just looking at the first aim, we're just trying to capture and digitize information on the characteristics, the numbers of firearms that come in through these events, in order that we can kind of understand what types of firearms people are trying to get rid of, and what those look like. Maybe and we might, this is a kind of research project that we might do, would be to look at the characteristics of the firearms turning up at these events, characteristics of firearms that are used in crimes or in self-harm situations. And that would be a useful way of us understanding how these events work and what they achieve. The next one, and this is where it comes into the actual events, and this is where we might work with you on those days to actually collect data. So in this instance, we're trying to collect very, very briefly from the people who are coming in some basic characteristics about them and some basic ideas of why they're getting rid of that firearm. And this would all be very, very crude, but we would try and do this for everybody who turned up at the event to dispose of a firearm. And over the 5 to 6 events, we'd have quite a large number with some very basic data on who's coming in, why they're coming. And then that would provide us with the opportunity then for a kind of smaller subproportion of the people coming in who were willing to interview them after these events, to follow up. And what we'd be trying to do in those interviews would be to just get to the deeper issues of why they've become, disinterested in owning firearms, maybe how they came to own firearms in the first place. Maybe they inherited them and didn't really want a firearm at all. And we think there are probably lots of people in the US, especially as we keep producing so many firearms, that probably come into contact with firearms this way. And we just, the research field just doesn't know anything about these types of firearm owner. And so we want to use these events as a way to gain some insights about those types of people. So just to leave you with a few things you hope to learn, we want to know more about unwanted firearms, why they're unwanted, reluctant owners, as we're starting to call them, people who have firearms but really don't want them, but probably in the past haven't been able to get rid of them. And we think this is really important for understanding these types of events will be really important opportunity to understand why individuals seek to dispose of firearms. And overall, we think that this will be useful information in helping lawmakers, policymakers think about how we provide services to people who want to dispose of their firearms. And maybe we can get people thinking that this is something that is worth doing. Totally happy to take any questions. If there's not time for that, I've just left my email address, and people are welcome to contact me. We're just waiting at the moment to hear back, to get the green light on whether we have funding that's going to be supported by the University of Michigan to support this. So I'll let Chris update people when we have that, but we're very optimistic and really excited to be involved in this.
Well, Dave, we're really, I mean, just as a director, I'm really thrilled that you're involved here and that we can at all provide some sort of what would be hopefully useful data to helping change policy and to change perhaps some laws and this kind of thing to make it easier for people who don't want weapons to dispose of. Any questions for Dave that you can think of? Great, you've got his email address. Give him a round of applause, even if you're not a Michigan fan, for the work that they are doing, which is absolutely terrific. And I've got just 1 or 2 slides left, so we're almost out of here, folks. I'm sorry I'm going to take your time like this. Let's see, what's expected of our parish partners then? I've outlined this pretty well, and so I'm not going to go into detail. Volunteers, we're going to work to make sure each event is adequately staffed with trained volunteers. And you can see our volunteer job description documents that I've given you. No matter how many or how few volunteers you have, we'll work with you, right? If we have to bring a ton of our own, but you know, once the buzz kind of goes out, like, you were here last year, right? From Orlando? Yeah, I remember. That was pretty fun, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, we made friends, we had meals together, it really is not a bad time. And you might do it at your church and say, hey, can I do it at Waterford? You know, hey, can I do it at Nativity? It's really kind of, I mean, it may sound kind of bizarre, it is. But it's really kind of a cool thing to do. So for volunteers, you know, we'll work with you on that regarding hospitality. We'd like you guys to really take the charge on that one, including refreshments for volunteers and donors, entertainment, music, live, recorded. I went through that already. Food may be for donation based, it may be for free. We'd like to keep everything donation based here as a policy. And so we'll look to you to supply as many tables, chairs, miscellaneous equipment, that kind of thing. And we encourage you to invite as many related local partners as you know of in your community, gun safety advocates, other advocacy organizations, community health groups. All hospitality plans should be, you know, we'll work with you on that also. So hospitality, as much or as little. Regarding fundraising, our typical events cost about $25,000 to put on. And we're still even putting together that as we evaluate our insurance policies, which have not been cheap. And so we are going, pedal to the metal to raise as much of that as we can. After our first year of doing it, we gave away those $5,000 of gift cards in 20 minutes. We knew we better have more money next year, and many of you guys helped write us a check. And you did that, and we had around $20,000 to $25,000 between us and the county to support that. The county is looking at this event. They've given us $5,000, and if that goes well, and we will have our commissioners here, they've made it clear that they're happy to see if there's more where that came from. And so we are going to challenge you to, there's an insurance guy across the street. I knocked on his door. I don't really know him very well. I welcomed him when he moved in, and he gave me a check for $1,000. You'd be surprised how many people this issue touches. And they've had a family member, they've had a friend, and they want to see these guns destroyed. So when you get started early, when you go down your Rolodex, churches are usually a really good place to call. And other partners, I'm ready to send a proposal to the rabbi down the street. Who's very amenable to this, and he's told me that he's going to, answer me with some green paperwork, so that's great. But what we like to do is to just challenge you to come up with as much of that funding as you can. We will use your funding for the gift cards, so that you'll be able to say that that's our portion, we're doing that. If you come up with more than that, great, help us pay for insurance, help us pay for saws and generators and all the other stuff that are going to, t-shirts, etc., that are going to be brought to your place. So, questions? There we go at 7:59:48. Questions? Yes.
For liability insurance.
Yes.
So is your organization insured, and then you're covering the?
Yeah, we have one policy that is up for review at Church Insurance now. And it's expensive, but if Church Insurance, I'm going to talk to them tomorrow, says it's good, it talks to Bonnie, our bishop, it says it's good, then we'll know we're insured with the appropriate insurance. Now, it's two policies, it's general liability, so that covers the donors and any kind of saw blades that would fly off and take off a cross or something. And the other is medical, which is for volunteers and staff. And so we will be working to get the names of everybody who's gonna volunteer there to make sure they're insured. Church insurance will not cover this. They've
Under a regular policy.
under our regular policy, and it would shock me because there are a lot of churches that kind of do this, but they don't do it at the scale. But I've been in touch with them and I said, well, what do you do? And, oh, we just do it in the parking lot. Like, oh, my bishop, don't tell your bishop. So in talking to church insurance, they are actually planning on coming down this summer to see what it is we're doing. Because the reason they don't cover it is because it's not a mission of the church. And when we showed them 6 churches who thinks it's their mission, maybe they'll start covering it, which will be good for us and for other Episcopal churches that want to do it. Yeah, and it's a 1 million, 2 million policy, and then it's, I think, $25,000 lien fee for those countries. So it meets the diocesan standards. You guys have been so good, quiet as church members, yeah.
Do you, have there ever been disputes that happen during those, let's say maybe family members disagree about what should happen with the firearm, or something like that happens where,
That's a good question. We did some research on the internet because we wanted to approach insurance companies and say, look, these aren't dangerous events, and we really couldn't find any instance of, unfortunately, you're safer at a gun buyback than you are at a school or movie theater in the United States. We do have, marked police that will be, depending on who your law enforcement agency is, if they want to camp out there. But our police chief, they charged $5,000 when they came. And certainly we could use that in gift cards instead of having them, and then they have to go through a lot to get rid of a gun.
One of the things you said that the shepherds do is they monitor the people to make sure that somebody doesn't come in from the outside asking to buy their gun from them. What type of authority do those people have?
And actually, we're gonna take a look at your campus and see what that's gonna look like. You're private property as we are, and so all of the kind of approaching was happening on the sidewalk. And we made it clear, hey, you guys are out here, you're doing your thing, we respect your rights and we respect where you came from. God made us in different varieties, but God also made this private property, and that sidewalk is public property. Do what you want there, but only donors are allowed here. So if you want to donate a gun, come on in, but otherwise that's it. So that will probably not be left to shepherds, that will probably be left to our security people, and they will be the ones who will tell people, and we haven't had anything too caustic happen. I mean, the guys were pretty law-abiding, if you will, with their protests. They stayed right on the sidewalk. But I realize some of your campuses might be a little more tricky in terms of how people might gain access. But we do, if somebody does look like they're like they shouldn't be there, we can produce a flyer that can be handed out that says, this is a private event, it's welcome for donors. If you're not a donor, we ask that you please stay off the property, if for no other reason, for safety concerns. We're gonna be chopping up guns here, we don't want all kinds of people coming through. Question? Any online questions? I'm looking at the chat, if you've got any, just put it in there.
First, I have another question.
Yeah, one more question.
So do the individual parishes, are they responsible for contacting their local police department?
Yeah, when we interface with you, we'll probably want to have, and Carl is really good. Carl, in fact, is probably on a first name basis with your police chief. He knows them all across the area. And we'll sit down, we'll explain what we're doing, why we're doing it. We want to help police. This is something that, some police aren't real big fans of this for a number of reasons, but one reason is, well, you got to have a ballistics test on that gun. And once you do that, you have to get in line with the sheriff's department. The police have to take it in to do that. And we've just politely said, well, we're not going to go that far. We are going to, it's us or the Detroit River where the gun's going to go. And, we're happy to take it and do it that way. But that's been probably the biggest, but many times they don't have the staff to do that. come out to get a computer hooked up, to run the thing, to figure it out, and to send it out to Pontiac and wait in line. We have guns we collected in 2022 that are still in the property locker in Southfield that have not yet been ballistics tested.
And do they do the ballistics testing to see if they're losing price?
They do. And then, of course, the question is, oh, great, I found Jimmy Hoffa's gun. Well, solve the crime. It's just because you find a gun doesn't mean that you've. So we have, walked that up the chain, and we've just had to politely say, we're sorry, Carl was at our meeting with Southfield Police, and we're like, yeah, we know you'd like that, but, you can imagine how that slows down the line and people needing to, get through. But that's a good question.
What about the shepherds having to fill out these forms for people that might not be literally competent to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You're allowed to help anybody who might have a difficult time filling out forms to do so. That's fine. Yeah.
Do you have forms in Spanish?
We do not have these forms in Spanish. That might be another, I know you guys have 25% of your congregation now is Spanish speaking. So depending on your location, Jessica, we could probably make one or give this to you and you can make it in Spanish. Yeah, Ken.
Notice on the form that there's no place on there, where the person who owns the firearm is giving us permission to chop up.
Right, yeah, no, I didn't include the waiver. Yeah, this is just the registration that would go on to law enforcement. But yeah, there's another waiver that it's not in this packet. That really, and that's just, I think for our use, that we want to just make it clear that, we're just doing it for them.
For the high school seniors who have to do community service projects, would there be something in this event that some of them could do?
Well, 18 and over, we did have Oxford kids with us in years past. They helped us get, one of the things that, we'll work with Jessica on and we'll work on our event on is goodie bags. And we had a day where we made goodie bags and the Oxford kids came and helped us do that. But really we like to keep it kind of 18 and over for liability for safety when that happens. So if they're a senior.
Do you do refreshments?
I bet they could do, stick in the church and, do refreshments, because this is an outdoor event. But yeah, I would imagine if they're there. I'd have to double check with the liability coverage on volunteers to make sure they were covered, to see if there's age limit on that. All right, well, how's it sound, you guys? Are you excited? Yeah, I'm sorry? There's some in the chat box, okay. Yeah, I know, I think that was a previous comment. Somebody messaging me about something else. Let's see. Yeah, I cleared it on my computer. And it's not on this one. Great. Well, listen, so glad you guys could stay with us. Please stand up. And you guys online, thank you very much for joining us. We just have a closing prayer before we open up the champagne. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the gift of unity that we have in you, the shared desire we have to bring the kingdom, the place that ought to be, into the world that is. We ask that you guide us and lead us, be our great shepherd, and take us through this time. In the name of your Son, in the name of love, we pray. Amen. 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 All right, friends, stick around, mingle, and you guys online, it was great to see you, and this will be recorded, as I say, and if you need it, let me know.
Thank you, Reverend, as always.